Okay, so we got our front kind of wrapped up for right now. I mean, there's a couple little things that I still need to do, but if you'll notice where I parked that thing, that wall is right against that front end right there, and that's a big pain in my butt that I just really don't feel like dealing with. So the couple little things that need to get on the front end, they just gonna have to wait until I can turn it and get the front end up here where the back end is. So the goal now is to build some rear suspension for this thing. So I'm pretty excited because, then it'll be ready to drive. So we're going to do a triangulated 4-link. I say we because you're going to ride along with me. So we're going to do a triangulated 4-link back here. Going to start by, we got to do some tear down. Now, before we tear it down, I'm going to show you. You see those 3 holes right there? That is where the factory bump stop mounted. That middle hole right there is where I'm going to use that as the center point for my axle. Now, I will take a couple measurements and make sure that they are the same from side to side, but they should be. And I like using that area because those holes were put there from the factory, so should be good to go. Now, obviously, the heim joints and stuff that we will have, they're going to have a little adjustment in them, so if I don't nail it dead on, should be able to adjust it out. So the plan is I'm going to cut out this cross member. That's where we're going to put our cross member where our center link arms will mount. Then I'm going to come out here. You see right there, that is where the stock leaf spring mount was. We're going to build a mount that comes off of that for our lower arm to come back. And we got a whole lot to do to the axle to get it where we need it. Once we get it out and get ready, get to that point, then, we'll talk about that then. We'll talk about pinion angle and all that good stuff as we go. So probably going to start by removing that section of the exhaust pipe. That way it's all the way out of the way because we can always do something with that later. So we'll get that off of there. Then we got this right here. This is our mount for our parking brake cable. We're going to keep that. That is an old mount for the helper spring that was on the leaf springs. That guy's got to go. And that one right there, same thing, got to go. We'll cut it loose from this piece of plate that I put on here that's currently holding the rear axle in place. So we'll that guy off of there. Same with over here. Get that mount. Got to go. And that one's got to go as well. We got an old exhaust hanger right here. That's got to go as well. Definitely going to use this fuel tank right here because I don't really feel like having to redo all that crap. You see when we get ready to build in this cross member, got all these fuel lines and stuff we got to work around. I'm really, it's going to be shaped a lot like what is already there. Going to work around the fuel lines, obviously. I'm not trying to interrupt and move all of that kind of stuff. Just going to really build a new one that's going to really accommodate the mount for the link arms like we need. So, first things first, we got to cut some stuff off. So I'm going to get to doing all the and you can just watch and probably, it won't take but just a second for y'all. Well, after a whole lot of noise and a lot of mess, see, I kind of spared y'all having to go through all of that, but I got all the crap all chopped off of there and out of the way. I kind of cleaned ground those welds off. And you can see right here where that cross member was, I went ahead and this frame, you know, it had that black goo on it. Not as bad as what the Chevrolets have, but it's still on there. So I wiped all that off and kind of went over it with a grinder and kind of cleaned up and smoothed it out. And I got the inside of it kind of scraped off and wiped out with a rag and all that good kind of stuff. So now we're finally ready to start making a cross member and start kind of trying to get this rear suspension together. So that brings me to this ginormous, heavy, ugly thing at the moment. So before I can start building cross members and all that, we got to do a little bit of tear down on this axle so I can get it where it's a little bit easy to work with and mess with. So I think what we're going to start with is we're going to get the parking brake cable off of it. I'm going to get the brake caliper off of it. Going to get the brake line off of it. Going to get that breather tube off of it. Any little stuff like that I can kind of get off of it to get out of the way to help me when I get ready to start mounting some link arms. Now, you will see that bent bracket right there. That is for the sway bar. I'm planning to keep that. This is for the shock mount. I'm hoping I can use that. Now, both of those are bent all to hell, so I'm going to probably, at some point in time, have to take a hammer and try to whoop them back around straight. If I have to cut them off, I will. I can always make more shock mounts and kind of extend them off of that. But for now, we're going to get started stripping this thing down and get all this stuff off of it. Then I'm going to try to make me some type of little wooden cart. I'll make like a kind of like a stocks to go there and here, and then make a board that goes between it, and then another board like a triangle shape that's going to come out and sit underneath the pinion. And I'm going to try to put it on some wheels. That way I can roll this axle out from under the truck and back and forth out from under there while I'm kind of figuring a few things out. And because doing it with a jack, I can do it, but it's real pain in the butt. So if I could put it on there like that, that way I can move it, because I may have to pull it in and out a couple of times to get things the way that I want. Then we'll use an engine cradle to throw it up there on the working bench. So, get started ripping this thing apart. Now, I know that didn't look like much, just dropping that off of there, but that probably dropped 50 pounds or damn near 50 pounds off this axle. Just dropping those calipers and those brackets. And I mean, the brake lines didn't really weigh much. They were just really kind of a pain in the butt. Same with the parking brake cables. They're just all in the damn way. So that does make it a lot easier. Now, obviously in the future, I will be pulling the axles out of it, pulling the hubs off of it, drain the fluid out of it, just that way it's not leaking everywhere while I'm trying to work on it. Honestly, this differential doesn't leak, and because this does have a full float axle shaft, I can pull those axles out of it. There again, drop some more weight off of it, because if I could get these rotors and these big ass hubs off of here, that certainly would lighten up the load a ton. But for now, I'm pretty happy just to at least get that off, and I'm gonna get to work kind of whipping me up some kind of little cart that I can move this thing under there and kind of get a good look at how I want to position things and whatnot. Before I put it under there, I haven't decided yet if I want to go on and cut these spring perches off before I go under there or not. I don't know. I could not. I don't guess it really matters a whole lot. I don't know. First things first is to get me some kind of little dolly made to roll this thing under there and kind of square a few things up and Then we got to lift the front up to ride height and kind of get an idea for where we want everything, once everything's cleaned up and really ready to start working. So I'm gonna go put these big old heavy calipers somewhere out of the way, and let's see, then I gotta do a little bit of woodwork. I gotta thumb through my construction lumber here and see what I can come up with to whip up something, like I said, a little dolly. I mean, basically I'm thinking, right here, this is the outside edge of the frame, the inside edge of this, so probably gonna kind of try to get something where it sits right in under here, which means I'm gonna have to go ahead and bend this back around. So if I can get something where it kind of sits in, kind of right where the frame rail would be on either side, then it'll come underneath, hold my pinion. That way it just kind of holds it all up. That way the axle can't just flop around. And then I can always kind of move it to set my pinion angle exactly where I want. But just for now, if I can at least get it under there, kind of get a good idea for where my link arms I'm going to want them on my axle, and where I'm going to want to set up my cross member on the truck. So I'm gonna go put this junk up and get started whipping up some kind of little dolly for this thing, and we'll see what I come up with for that. Maybe, hopefully it'll be something neat that's not too awful labor intensive. I'm gonna go see what I got. Hey, fancy running into you here. So I decided that I'm gonna break this axle down a little bit before we start fitting it under the truck and all that kind of stuff, because, well, it's extremely heavy right now. And I got some stuff that I'm not going to need throughout the process of doing all this work and welding and fitting and brackets and all that crap all over it. So we got the initial stuff cleaned off of it, just saw all that. So now I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to crack this diff cover, drain all the differential, all the gear oil out of it. Those of you that have ever done that, you will understand that you will know, you will be able to smell this video, because you know how lovely gear oil smells. Then we're going to go from there. This axle is what you call a full floating rear axle, which means that you can actually take the bolts out of the axle right here. You can slide the axle completely out of the differential without having to remove the rotor and the hub and all that kind of stuff. So I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to remove the axles. Then I'm probably going to go ahead and remove the hub and the rotor, because that combo weighs a lot. And I've got this little skateboard made for this axle. So we'll stick that under here afterwards. So we're going to pull the axles. We'll go ahead, we'll pull the hub. We'll pull the rotor off of it. Now, I did go ahead and stick my wheels up on here, and I have plenty of clearance. I know about where the wheels come to. I've got plenty of room between where the inside of my frame, or the outside of my frame rail is, and where the inside of the tire would be. So it's not going to be a problem. I won't have to do a lot of test fitting there. I'll go ahead and put a mark on my axle once I get it all cleaned up. So we'll get those parts off. Then I'm going to go ahead. We're going to cut the remnants of these two plates off. We got to cut these, the old spring perches off, and then just kind of clean up the axle tube, kind of grind off this old paint crud that's on there. Get that crap off. Then we'll be able to be ready to throw this thing on my little skateboard that I made for it, stick it under there, and kind of get an idea for what we're looking like. Now, I did go ahead and I measured my wheel to the center of my wheel center, and I've got the axle right now. It's sitting just a little bit above where it would be sitting if it were riding on the wheels of the truck. That way, when I sit it under there, I will know it'll be exactly as if the wheels were on the axle. It's going to sit in the same spot, because I made my little skateboard where it'll be basically sitting where the center line of the axle will be where it would be if the wheels were on there. Hope you got all that. It's kind of a lot. If not, I'll explain it, as we get to it more. I did go ahead and raise the front of the truck up to about what I anticipate ride height to be, which is about 4 to 5 inches off the ground. That's where I want to ride. So that's where I'm going to set my center line of my suspension up at. That way, we can vary up or down from there, but I want to go ahead and get my pinion angle set at ride height, because that's where we're going to be driving. Whenever we get where we're going, we'll air it out for all the peasants, and I don't really care what the pinion angle is at that point, because we ain't driving no way. So let's get started doing some work. So first things first, we'll go ahead and crack this differential cover loose, and then we'll move on to all this other crap. I don't know if I'm going to get it all done in the next 13 seconds or not, but we'll find out. All right, so I know I said I was going to tear it down, and that I knew pretty much where the wheel and tire set as far as how far on the axle they set. And I did pretty much know, but I did decide that I wanted to go ahead and make a surefire mark on it, just to be safe. I mean, you know, why not while I can, right? Before I take it all apart, and then I can't do it without having to put it all back together. If I can go ahead and get a kind of a mark or a scribe on there right now to kind of give me a baseline, you know, why would I not? I feel like it's kind of stupid if I don't. So I am going to do that right now. Now I got to get me some type of straight edge here. I got me like I don't know, a yardstick for lack of a better term here. And I'm thinking that if I just run this right down the side of the tire until it sits nice and flat on the axle, that should give me pretty doggone, that'll get me pretty damn close. So got me a good spot right here. Put me a nice little paint pen mark. So now what I can do is I can measure from this flange right here where the disc brake caliper and everything all mounts, and you know, the drum for the parking brake. I can measure from that flange to this mount, transfer that to the other side, so I know that that's my that represents the farthest end that my wheel and tire are going to come. Now, I don't plan to get anywhere near that because you know, we still got to clear the caliper and all that, so we got to make another mark for that to clear all those brackets and whatnot. But at least that gives me a baseline. That way I don't ever have to wonder where my wheel and tire are. Now I did go ahead and put the wheel and tire and the adapter plate on off camera because it's a real pain in the ass to do, and it just takes me a few minutes to sit there and do it, and I just didn't feel like you really cared to sit there and watch me do it. At this point in time, you've seen me do it once or twice already. So I don't have to take any more measurements of this, so I'm going to go ahead off camera and I'll take this off, and then we'll come back, we'll finish tearing this guy down. Okay, so I I had the axle positioned perfectly between these two posts in my shop here, so that I couldn't get the axle shafts out of it without putting it on my little skateboard here. I did get it put on the skateboard, but the front of it was like way too low. So because the way the axles, or the way the wheels spin underneath it, it wouldn't really let them spin right. It kind of made it really sketchy, actually. So I took a little time off camera and I got my skateboard all squared away. I got the axle sitting level. I got the front cut down so the pinion angle is set where it needs to be. Our axle center line is where it would be if the wheels were on. So if I could just get this underneath the back of the truck there, I'll be in good shape. Now, what I will have to do, I will have to jack up the back of the frame in order to roll this underneath. But then once I roll this underneath and let the frame back down to those jack stands, that will be where the axle needs to be at ride height. So, and we'll have our pinion angle set and ready to go. That way when we take all the measurements from there, we should be in pretty good shape when we get ready to put the link arms on it and taking all our measurements and everything. And knowing where the axle is at ride height, you'll see here in just a little bit, really determines how and where I put my brackets for the angles of the four link arms. But now for my next trick, I am going to go ahead and lock these shock mounts off the bottoms of these brackets. I'm going to leave the bracket on because I don't think it'll be in the way of anything, but I'm going to go ahead and chop the bottom of the shock mounts off of it. We're going to cut these pieces of metal off of each side. Then I'm going to come in here and I'm going to cut these old spring perches off. Now, before anybody even asks why I don't just cut them off with my plasma cutter, because if you try if you angle a plasma cutter like straight into stuff like this, it really creates a blowout, and it's really rough on the tips of the plasma cutter, and I can't control my arc, and I don't really want to cut deep into my axle here. So I'm going to take a cut-off wheel and grinder and cut along the side of this weld right here and get this thing lopped off of here. Now I will take a plasma cutter and cut from the back side of this. That way I have less to clean off. Same over here, all the same thing. So we'll get that stuff cut off of there, and we'll get that all cleaned up, and then we'll determine exactly what I want to do with these big old heavy things. I've got my mark made where my wheel comes in, where my wheel and tires sit, which really doesn't even matter that much because I still got to clear the brake caliper, and if I clear the brake caliper, well, no, it's the bags are probably kind of above it. Nonetheless, I've got my mark for where my wheel comes in, and this rotor and wheel hub assembly is extremely heavy, and it will make if I can go and get these off, plus it'll be a lot easier for me to clean up and kind of put some paint on and get looking a little bit nicer before I put them back on. If I can go and get that done, it makes it easier to handle, it makes it easier to move around, things like that. So let's get this stuff cut off of here, and I've got to order a big ass socket. It's got a 3.5 inch nut on the inside of this hub that holds this whole assembly on. I've got that order from Amazon. It's supposed to be here Monday, so hopefully I can wait until that nut gets here, and I'll just find some other kind of way to beat the thing off of there. So nonetheless, right now, let's get this stuff cut off. Let's get this axle cleaned up, and then we can move on to that.